Design has changed drastically. There were several drivers, but if you focus on the most recent and then go back a little bit, obviously most recent change has to do with the sustainability, green emphasis, green infrastructure. That has many aspects, but mainly based on increasing awareness of the public as well as the profession at large. There is more emphasis doing things right, doing with a low impact to both nature and culture.
There are groups out there that are pushing sustainability and green materials where when I first got out of school, you had to go searching out those types of things. Now you see them on TV and people are talking about them, and LEED has changed the marketplace tremendously. Just the availability of materials now to be able to make better choices, I think is the biggest change that I've seen.
Is the public asking for it, or is it the designers asking for it?
I think there's a segment of the public that's asking for it. Definitely, there's also a segment of designers that are asking for it. There's a segment of designers that don't care about it still. But I think as we creep toward 9 billion people in the world, we're going to have to start making those harder choices.
Creep or leap?
Yeah. It'll be a leap for sure.
Well, Bob, I think the focus of landscape architecture is still essentially the same. However, we have broadened our areas of concern because this has been commensurate with public awareness of environmental issues, and we have responded accordingly. So the landscape architecture has broadened its scope.
The most important thing is going to be dealing with sprawl.
In the United States, we're finally running out of built as you needed in the open spaces, whether that was green or that was gray, brown fields, to more of an emphasis coming back and building in gray and brown. We're going to see this continue and in fact get new dimensions with the need for sustainability and trying to conserve green fields as opposed to brown and gray fields out there. Prior to that, a big change that influenced design was the developments with the public agencies to incorporate user feedback and preferences and perceptions of the user, especially with the visual resource assessment and management. I will say late 60s, 70s were dominated by that.
We allowed our communities to expand so much, even when the populations may have actually been on a decline. And so now we've spread out infrastructure, physical infrastructure like roads, sewers, even things like schools, medical, emergency medical services. We've spread these things out so much, and that has to be maintained for perpetuity unless we shrink things down. And that really compromises our ability to invest in new infrastructure. Our ability to pay for the infrastructure that we have has been compromised, and I believe people's willingness and ability to pay for the infrastructure we already have in the ground and above ground has been compromised. And so I believe part of what we're looking at in terms of resilience is how do we better make do with what we have? How do we go back and retrofit?
I see even a greater emphasis on preservation, conservation, and use of water, preventing pollution.
That's going to change the way we look at everything. Water. Water is something that's it's the elephant in the room. We all think we've got plenty of water, and there's going to be huge issues with that. We'll see wars fought over water.
Cost of energy and natural resources such as stormwater management, specifically capturing rainwater and recycling it for irrigation uses, and cleansing stormwater runoff before it pollutes our waterways, that sort of thing. All environmental issues have definitely been a concern of, or definitely currently popular among our clientele. Solar, wind,
we live in critical time, I could say, with everything that we see around us in terms of environmental hazards that we got, natural stuff, in terms of the environment that we live in right now. We're kind of having heads up about just this is what is going on right now, so quite frankly I could say we gotta start giving people messages how to address those problems. We got the solutions, we got the technology, we got time. It's kind of like, okay, we could be a step ahead for those challenges. And that's about it.
What are your concerns for the future?
That we're not going to start moving forward soon enough. It's not going to be pushed sustainable. I'm worried that sustainability won't be pushed soon enough. We won't move fast enough, and that will just end up having our kids wear gas masks to school because there's so much pollution.
I think the future holds a lot of promising things actually, and not so much from the negative aspect that we are making strides and making changes, and it's really important to kind of keep this ball rolling. So you really need to don't let the stamina die down. So it's really involve students and the younger community in taking a part in protecting our world and helping our future grow.
What are the challenges? What are some of the concerns you see?
I think some of the challenges are apathy. People don't realize that they need to take, everybody has a role, and everything that you do directly affects people around you. So a lot of people don't have a passion for it, and it's our duty to help motivate other people to participate and help.
Public has been playing more and more role, especially the push originating under the facilitation of non-for-profit agencies, corporations, institutions, becoming more vocal and effective.
Well, I think that we're blessed and cursed with a lot of land, small population. We're going to start seeing pressures in the Delta on farming. We're already seeing issues with smaller budgets. Education is going to be something that we have got to push in the state of Mississippi. We're lagging behind the rest of the country on looking to the future. How are we going to change this place? A lot of people want the status quo, and that's just not going to, my belief is it's not going to work, keeping things like they are. There's people that are going to have to stand up in Mississippi and say, we can't afford to do things like this anymore. If we can't afford to build a building and put and pay for the energy for it for 30 years, why can't we put up some money up front to get off the grid so that we're not paying in the long run? Or that building's paying itself for itself in the long run. I don't know why people don't want to tackle those issues here.
One of the things that I tell students, and I tell anybody who cares to ask or listen, is for a place to be truly sustainable, you have to want to use it, and it has to be functional. And so when we talk about sustainable design, first and foremost, it has to be functional. It has to work well. It has to be a place that you want to be, which doesn't necessarily mean that doesn't compromise the aesthetic, but because the aesthetics are absolutely fundamentally a part. I mean, a place could function well, say on paper, it could be engineered to function seamlessly. But if it's not a pleasant place to be, if it's not a place that appeals to all the senses, you're not going to want to be there, and therefore it's not going to be sustainable. And so all those pieces have to come together. Similarly, if it's unless the purpose of a project is art for art's sake, I would also argue the flip side of that is true, that if a place is created through the art for art's sake lens, it may not function well. It may not provide the resilience that's needed. So the engineering side and the art side need to come together more to create a whole place that's resilient, a place that you want to be, that's going to endure over time.